Apple iPhone 15 Pro Max camera test. Peace be upon you, my dear friends and followers of the channel. How are you today? I hope you are well and in good health. Today with you is a beautiful, new and important video for everyone. This video will be called the Apple iPhone 15 Pro Max camera test. But before watching the video, subscribe to the channel and like and share so that it reaches the largest number of people. Now let's watch the video and I hope you like it. We put the Apple iPhone 15 Pro Max through a rigorous battery of DxOMark tests to measure its performance in photo and video quality and zoom from an end-user perspective. In this video we demonstrate the device's performance in a variety of tests and several common use cases and aim to highlight the most important results of our testing with a snippet of the data captured. Please note that all visuals in the review have been converted to JPG format for compatibility reasons. The analysis was performed on HEC, the device's native file format, for both images and video, an optimized visualization pipeline for an optimal experience with HDR display is described in the review. Overview. Main camera specifications. Primary camera, 48MP sensor, 2.44A micro M quad pixel, 24mm equivalent f/1.78 lens, dual pixel autofocus, optical image stabilizer, ultra wide camera, 12MP sensor, 13mm equivalent f/2.2 lens, dual pixel f telecamera, 12MP sensor, 1.12A micro M pixels, 120mm equivalent f/2.8 lens, dual pixel f/A17 Pro chip. Pros: vivid brightness and contrast when viewing images on an HDR display, accurate exposure, even in night shots, delivering natural and pleasing skin tones and colors, excellent detail in bright light, fast and accurate autofocus, effective video stabilization. Cons: noise in low light images, unwanted artifacts, including glare, shadows, and aliasing, slightly limited dynamic range in images, inconsistent detail across all zoom ranges. The Apple iPhone 15 Pro Max is the best iPhone we've tested so far and guarantees itself a place among the best devices in the DxOMark camera ranking. Its performance stood out in terms of exposure, which consistently delivered great photo and video results across a range of shooting conditions. iPhone 15 Pro Max excelled noticeably in portrait photography and videography, capturing intricate details and showing skin tones beautifully. While its camera specs may not seem cutting edge on paper compared to some competitors, Apple engineers have been able to make improvements where it matters. The quad-layer image sensor, like in last year's iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max, improves image quality and enables smooth 2x zoom. The dedicated 5x telephoto lens allows for better image quality and longer zoom factors, and the iPhone 15 Pro Max overtakes its predecessors as the best smartphone for video recording. Combined, these improvements establish it as a great choice for mobile photographers and videographers. Please note that in this article, we are making comparisons between the Apple iPhone 15 Pro Max and iPhone 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max. The iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max models had similar camera module specifications and achieved identical results in tests last year. Friends and family: in our tests, the iPhone 15 Pro Max excelled at taking portraits, showing impressive accuracy in skin tone and facial exposure in varying lighting conditions, especially when viewed on the iPhone's screen. The camera usually maintains excellent contrast on faces, even in difficult situations, while preserving complex details, for example around the eyes. Its ability to capture a shot the moment the shutter button is pressed reduces the risk of missing the crucial moment. Plus, the iPhone 15 Pro Max is still one of the best flagship phones for motion freeze, which is very useful for taking amazing photos of friends, kids, and pets. Low lighting. While the iPhone 15 Pro Max provided good exposure and maintained high levels of detail in low light conditions, high noise levels reduced overall image quality. When shooting at night, the device will automatically switch from 24MP to 12MP image size, allowing for better noise control. However, low resolution is also responsible for the loss of very fine details. However, some specific efforts have been made to significantly improve the balance between texture and noise compared to the previous iPhone 14 Pro. While low light performance in photography mode could have been better in terms of noise and detail, Low light video was better than most competing phones. When shooting in low light, the Apple iPhone 15 Pro Max delivered very nice and accurate exposure, and produced balanced, natural colors, along with good levels of detail. Video stabilization was also effective. Test summary about Xmark camera tests. Xmark camera evaluations are conducted in laboratories and in real-world situations using a variety of subjects. The results are based on objective tests, the results of which are calculated directly by measurement software in our laboratory settings, and on perceptual tests, where a sophisticated set of metrics allows a group of image experts to compare aspects of image quality that require human judgment. The smartphone testing involves a team of engineers and technicians for about a week. Image, zoom and video quality are scored separately and then combined into an overall score for comparison between cameras in different devices. For more information about the Xmark camera protocol at this year's main event, Apple focused specifically on portrait photography and a new feature called Smart HDR, which appears to be a combination of an improved capture level HDR algorithm and a new file format that allows select images to be presented on HDR displays. We evaluated the iPhone's HEC files with embedded HDR data using the Photo app on macOS Sonoma and an XDR display. Other significant updates compared to previous generation iPhones include the jump from 12 megapixel photos to 24 megapixel by default in most lighting conditions. In our tests, this greatly improved texture quality, especially in close-up portraits. In addition, the device now offers different customization options and the ability to capture 48 megapixel images in HEC format. The Pro mode allows images to be captured in RAW format, opening up new possibilities for advanced users who prefer to work with DNG files. For the purpose of this test, we used the default settings with automatic switching of resolution in low light conditions. The combination of 24MP HEC image files and embedded HDR data produced stunning results when viewed on a dedicated monitor. Photo results were stunning in the Photo app on macOS Sonoma on the XDR display and the Photos app on the iPhone 15 Pro Max display alike, with displays brighter and more vibrant than ever before. However, users of displays, devices or apps that don't support Apple's HDR image format will only see JPEG images without the HDR effect. Approximation zoom is the third new usage score introduced with the Xmark version 5 camera. It evaluates the camera's ability to capture detail at distances of less than 10 centimeters and zooms in as close as possible to 1:1. Using the ultra-wide camera module, the Apple iPhone 15 Pro Max captures macro photos at an extremely high zoom level, thanks to its ultra-close focusing distance. Just like its predecessor, it also produced a very nice rendition of colors, as well as plenty of fine detail in the center of the frame. Compared to its predecessor, the iPhone 15 Pro Max has significantly improved in terms of dynamic range. Light clipping has been significantly reduced, catching up with the competition. In our tests, subject exposure was accurate and highly repeatable in most situations. The iPhone 15 Pro Max also performed very well in terms of contrast, especially in portraits. This was especially noticeable when viewing images on an HDR display, on an iPhone display, a last-gen iPad Pro, or a Mac with a Sonoma display and XDR for example. With this type of display, images appeared brighter than ever and with very nice contrast, not just on the subject but across the entire frame. In high contrast scenes, the difference from other devices was more noticeable, with very bright highlights creating a more natural effect to the human eye. Skin tone rendering was particularly nice, with very natural shadows and highlights on faces. The device also maintained the distinctive contrast offering of previous iPhone generations that prioritizes bright, well-exposed faces, making for great portrait shots. The Smart HDR feature helped produce very natural and pleasing colors, even in very difficult lighting conditions. Skin tones are improved compared to the already very good Apple iPhone 14 Pro, across all skin tones. In previous iPhone generations, we often noticed color shift in high contrast scenes. In the latest model, this has been mostly eliminated, thanks to the wide dynamic range and precise color management in the highlight areas of the frame. In our tests, Some slight color ghosting was sometimes still visible when shooting indoors or in low light. This was in keeping with Apple's signature style, and otherwise color rendering remained largely neutral. F-tests focus on focus accuracy, focus repeatability, shooting time delay, and depth of field. Shooting delay is the difference between the time the user presses the capture button and the time the photo is actually captured. This includes focusing speed and the device's ability to capture images at the right time, which is called no shutter lag capability. Even if a shallow depth of field can be pleasing for a portrait of a single subject or a close-up shot, it can also be problematic in some specific circumstances such as group photos. Both positions are tested. Focus accuracy is also evaluated in all real-life images captured, from infinity to close-up subjects and in low light to outdoor conditions. The iPhone 15 Pro Max has largely maintained the level of autofocus performance we've already seen on the predecessor, including zero shutter in most shooting conditions. This means that the camera is able to take a photo the moment the shutter is pressed, reducing the risk of missing the crucial moment. Only in very difficult low light conditions did our testers notice a slight delay to ensure good image quality throughout. In comparison, the iPhone 14 Pro offered a more repeatable shooting time in low light. However, this may come at the expense of other image quality factors or frame selection. The camera's fast aperture creates a shallow depth of field, which made for stunning macro shots but may be a drawback in other shooting situations. Without a variable aperture and no specific software solution to compensate for the shallow depth of field, texture and detail are lost in faces in the background of a group portrait scene. In contrast, other high-end phones, such as the Huawei P60 Pro, are able to preserve more image information about background subjects. The camera in Apple's new flagship comes with a completely new texture rendering management, and in our tests the results were impressive. With most lighting conditions resulting in 24MP images, the best details were preserved much better than most competitors. The difference was most noticeable on fine scan texture in close-up photos. The Apple iPhone 15 Pro Max delivered a very natural display with accurate local contrast and pleasing rendering of the finest details such as hair, lips, wrinkles, etc. At longer shooting distances and in low light conditions, some loss of detail could be noticed, but overall textures remained well preserved. In very low light, the camera uses pixel binning to maintain good overall image quality with accurate exposure and low levels of noise. However, a decrease in texture preservation was noticeable on the resulting lower resolution, 12MP, images. Like its predecessor, the iPhone 15 Pro Max comes with higher noise levels than some competitors, for example the Huawei P60 Pro. However, photos taken in bright light were free of noise, or only showed some fine grain in some areas of the images. In low light conditions, subtle luminance noise became more noticeable, especially in normal color areas. When shooting night scenes, the device automatically switched to a lower image resolution in order to reduce the amount of image noise. It is possible to deactivate this automatic switch in the Photos app. Most common photo artifacts were under control on the iPhone 15 Pro Max, but our testers noticed some ghosting, ringing, and ghosting effects in difficult shooting conditions. The ability to automatically switch to photo mode when faces are detected in scenes is one of the key new features introduced with the iPhone 15 series. Users can also remove the photo display picture in the Photos app, if they change their mind later. The photo effect applied by the iPhone 15 Pro Max is an improved version of what we saw on the iPhone 14 Pro. In our tests, the depth map was more accurate, resulting in better subject isolation, especially around fine details, such as hair. The intensity of the blur remained pleasant and the lights in the background were presented with nice contrast, which was especially noticeable in night images. Apple's new flagship was among the leading devices in our preview test. Pinching the control when zooming in was particularly smooth, and the preview image represented the final capture. In portrait mode, simulated bokeh was well presented in the preview, with consistent subject isolation and few differences in final capture. Exposure and local features such as noise were usually in line with the final image as well. However, the preview struggled to keep up with the increased dynamic range in iPhone 15 Pro Max photos. showing higher levels of highlight clipping. Despite slightly more differences between preview and capture than found on the iPhone 14 Pro, the new model offers much better preview quality than other competitors in the end, such as the Huawei P60 Pro and Google Pixel 7 Pro, and remains one of the most reliable devices on the market at this time. Connection. iPhone 15 Pro Max comes with a periscope design in the telephoto camera, which is the first of its kind in iPhone phones. The telephoto camera offers good zoom capabilities of up to 5x, or 120mm equivalent, thanks to its unique optical design. The lens also features an f/2.8 aperture, the brightest among 120mm phone cameras, as well as optical stabilization. Zoom in on the video. In our video zoom tests, the iPhone 15 Pro Max showed fairly good performance across a wide range of zoom factors, maintaining fairly high levels of detail from ultra-wide, 15mm equivalent, to long range with the zoom unit, 150mm. Noise was also well under control, even in low light conditions, and exposure was pleasant and accurate. Performance remained consistent when zoomed in, ensuring an overall enjoyable experience for videographers and opening up a lot of creative possibilities when shooting with the new iPhone. Like the iPhone 14 Pro, the new iPhone offers an ultra-wide camera with a 13mm equivalent focal length. When using this camera module, the device was able to preserve a fairly large amount of detail at minimum focal lengths, 13mm, 0.5x, with well-controlled noise and nice exposure. However, it wasn't on the same level as the best-in-class in terms of ultra-wide detail, despite the improvements over the 14 Pro. When zoomed to ultra-wide, the camera applies simple digital zoom without any fusion algorithms. This resulted in a noticeable reduction in image detail, meaning that the ultra-wide zoom can be better used at its native focal length. The addition of the periscope module represents a major development for the iPhone series. It allows long-range close-ups, 5x, to be captured with high levels of detail and a very pleasing overall presentation. However, the lack of a hardware or software solution for intermediate zoom levels meant that image quality was inconsistent across the telephoto zoom range. Our measurements shows that the Apple iPhone 15 Pro Max captures higher levels of detail than the iPhone 14 Pro for most zoom settings, especially at wide, 13mm to 21mm, and long, 120mm to 200 ranges, thanks to the dedicated zoom lens. 5x. However, between 35mm and 90mm, the level of detail decreases as zoom is achieved by cropping the primary camera image. At medium telephoto zoom settings, the iPhone 14 Pro performed slightly better as it turns its telephoto camera module already at around 75mm, 3x. Between 90mm and 120mm, the iPhone 15 Pro Max doesn't switch to a telephoto zoom yet, but instead applies detail enhancement processing to try and deliver slightly sharper images. However, in our tests this resulted in a sharp increase in sharpness, introducing unnatural details, noise and artifacts. At 120mm, the device eventually turns into a telephoto zoom unit. In our tests, this greatly improved the level of detail and image quality. At close range, 50mm, 2x. The device manages to maintain high levels of detail when compared to the competition. Color and exposure were pleasing in most conditions. At the medium range, 80mm, 3x, the level of detail is significantly reduced compared to telephoto or long-range settings. Some competitors, such as the Huawei 60 Pro, combine image information from the primary and telephoto camera modules to maximize image detail at medium telephoto settings. Apple does not implement any of these methods. Using the 5x telephoto module, the Apple iPhone 15 Pro Max produced long-range telephoto image quality not previously found on Apple devices. At 6x, the level of detail was very high, posing a challenge to devices like the Google Pixel 7 Pro and Huawei P60 Pro. Low-light close-ups are significantly improved over the iPhone 14 Pro, and some results even outperform top performers like the Huawei P60 Pro. We tested the Apple iPhone 15 Pro Max's video mode at 4K resolution, a variable frame rate of 60 fps, and Dolby Vision activation for the included HDR data. This configuration produced excellent results, securing the Apple flagship first place in the Xmark video ranking and surpassing Apple's previous generation flagship. Video exposure and color rendition were very consistent in most conditions, and the balance between texture and noise was the best we've seen yet. The autofocus system also showed good low light performance, and the video stabilization was among the best on the market. Just as with the iPhone 14 Pro and other HDR video capable devices we've tested previously, a compatible HDR display is required to see the full potential of an HDR display. Please note the YouTube only displays native HDR viewing if videos are watched on a compatible HDR display. Otherwise, compressed SDR video is displayed. The iPhone 15 Pro Max features a new ProRes log mode, which is available at 4K resolution and 60 frames per second. There is also now the ability to save footage to an external SSD. Add ACES color management compatibility to the mix, and the iPhone 15 Pro Max becomes a serious choice for professional videographers. Additional modes that have not been tested under the Xmark video protocol but may be important options for serious videographers are Cinematic mode for video up to 4K HDR at 30 fps. Motion mode up to 2.8K at 60 fps, and proven stabilization capabilities. The iPhone 15 Pro Max achieved the best video exposure result yet, thanks to a well-managed HDR format with a wide dynamic range, extremely stable exposure, and extremely smooth exposure transitions. Color management is another area where the iPhone 15 Pro Max performed much better than most competitors. While the white balance remained a little warm in indoor and low light conditions, the device was able to accurately display most skin tones, and color rendition was generally very pleasing. With improved tracking capabilities and fast autofocus, the iPhone 15 Pro Max manages to improve on its predecessor in this category as well. The iPhone 15 Pro Max introduced one of the most reliable autofocus systems for video, with accurate tracking, even in low light, and well-managed focus transitions for a pleasing cinematic effect. In our video tests, the iPhone 15 Pro Max produced noticeably higher levels of detail than most competitors and was able to restore some fine detail in portraits and landscapes, especially when recording in bright light. Because the iPhone 15 Pro Max was tested at a higher frame rate, 60 fps, texture scores were slightly lower than those of the iPhone 14 Pro. This was mainly noticeable in low light conditions. Video noise scores were close to last year's iPhone 14 Pro, with slight improvements noticeable in low light conditions. Well-controlled noise with the HDR video format is one of the strongest positive points of the iPhone 15 Pro Max's video mode. In terms of video stabilization, the iPhone 15 Pro Max manages to keep up with most flagship devices that feature a stable main camera module. Motions such as handshakes were typically compensated well, and sharpness between frames was more consistent than that of the iPhone 14 Pro. With good video quality at a high frame rate of 60 fps, the iPhone 15 Pro Max manages to reduce the effect of unwanted artifacts, especially shake effects, which particularly affect panorama shots. Some common artifacts such as aliasing, flare, and ringing were still occasionally visible, but their impact on the overall quality was usually minor. Glare can only pose a slight challenge to videographers, but the iPhone wasn't much different from other flagship phones in this regard. At the end of the video, I thank you for watching and I hope you liked it, and see you in a new video.